The rain had been falling over Brooklyn for 3 hours straight, the kind of October rain that soaked through jackets and chilled you to the bone. Lila Morrison watched the droplets race down the diner's front window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. The neon sign of Rosie's Diner buzzed intermittently above, casting pink and blue shadows across the wet pavement of the nearly empty street. 26 years old, three bums, $87,000 in debt. This was not the life she had planned. "Lila, honey, you heading out?" Rosie's gravelly voice cut through her thoughts. The 72-year-old owner was wiping down the counter with the same faded yellow cloth she had used for the past decade. Her weathered hands moved in familiar circles, decades of the same motion worn into muscle memory. Emma glanced at the clock above the kitchen pass-through. 10:47 p.m. She had been on her feet since 2 that afternoon. That made it a double shift. Again. Third one this week. "Yeah, just finishing up the last table." She gestured toward booth 7, where a tired-looking truck driver was nursing his third coffee refill, clearly killing time before his next haul. "Go on, I'll handle him," Rosie said, waving her off with the damp cloth. "You've been on your feet since 2. That's too long, even for you." Lila managed a small smile, the kind you give when someone shows you kindness you're too tired to fully appreciate. "Thanks, Rosie. I'll just take out the trash on my way." "Always the responsible one," Rosie muttered, but there was affection in her tone, the warmth of a woman who had watched too many young people grind themselves down trying to survive in a city that demanded everything and gave back scraps. "Don't forget your umbrella this time." Lila retrieved her worn canvas jacket from the hook near the kitchen and grabbed the 2 trash bags sitting by the back door. The umbrella sat right where she had left it that morning, propped against the wall. She looked at it, looked at the door. 20 feet to the dumpster, 20 feet back. She had survived worse than a little rain. The kitchen's fluorescent lights flickered as she pushed through the back door into the alley. The rain hit her immediately, cold and insistent, drumming against the pavement with a sound like static. She hefted the trash bags and moved quickly toward the dumpsters at the far end of the narrow passage between Rosie's Diner and the abandoned textile factory next door. Brooklyn at night had a particular quality, a mix of distant sirens, the hum of traffic from the expressway, and the constant rhythm of a city that never quite slept. Lila had lived here her whole 26 years. She knew which streets to avoid after dark, which shortcuts to take when running late, how to keep her head down and her keys between her fingers when walking alone. She tossed the first bag into the dumpster. The metallic clang echoed off the brick walls, swallowed almost immediately by the rain. As she lifted the second bag, a sound made her freeze. Crying. Not just any crying, the desperate, hiccuping wail of an infant. High-pitched, urgent, the kind of sound that bypasses rational thought and goes straight to instinct. Lila's heart seized. She dropped the trash bag. Its contents spilled forgotten at her feet. Coffee grounds and napkins scattered across the wet pavement. The sound came from behind the larger dumpster, deeper in the shadows where the alley dead-ended against a chain-link fence. The security light from the diner's back door barely reached that far, leaving everything beyond in near total darkness. "Hello?" Her voice came out uncertain, swallowed by the rain. "Is someone there?" The crying intensified, now clearly 2 different voices, 2 babies. Distinct pitches, slightly out of sync, creating a chorus of infant distress that made her chest ache. Lila's feet moved before her mind fully processed what she was doing. Training from a lifetime ago kicked in. Medical school orientation. First day of pediatric rotation. When you hear a child in distress, you respond. You always respond. She rounded the dumpster. Her eyes struggled to adjust to the darkness. The narrow beam of light from her phone flashlight cut through the rain, illuminating the scene in pieces. 2 infant car seats sat on the wet asphalt, partially sheltered by a fire escape above, but not enough to keep the rain off completely. The babies inside, they could not have been more than 8 or 9 months old, were crying, their small faces red and scrunched with distress. Tiny fists waving, mouths open in protest at the cold, the wet, the abandonment. But it was the man beside them that made Lila's breath catch in her throat. He was slumped against the brick wall, one hand gripping the handle of the nearest car seat with white-knuckled desperation. Even in the dim light, even through the rain, Lila could see the dark stains spreading across his left shoulder. The fabric of his expensive suit jacket torn, darker wetness mixing with rain, too dark to be water. Blood. Oh my God. The words came out as barely more than a whisper. Lila dropped to her knees beside him. The puddles soaked through her jeans instantly, cold water shocking against her skin. She barely noticed. Sir, sir, can you hear me? The man's eyes fluttered open, dark eyes almost black in the shadows, filled with pain and something else. Fear. But not fear for himself, Lila realized with sudden clarity. Fear for the crying infants beside him. Please. His voice was barely above a whisper, heavily accented, Italian maybe. Each word seemed to cost him tremendous effort. Please don't. Don't what? Sir, you need help. You're bleeding. No hospital. The words came out with surprising force given his condition. They'll take them. They'll take my children. Lila's hands shook as she pressed them against his shoulder, trying to assess the wound through his jacket. The warm wetness seeped between her fingers. 2 years of medical school, cut short by tragedy and debt, suddenly felt both invaluable and entirely insufficient. She had seen injuries before, studied trauma protocols, done rotations in emergency rooms where Saturday nights looked like war zones. She knew enough to recognize this was serious. The wound on his shoulder was still bleeding, though not as heavily as it must have been initially, but his skin was cold, too cold, and his breathing was shallow, rapid, signs of shock setting in. I need to call 911, Lila said, more to herself than to him. Her voice shook. She fumbled for her phone with bloodied fingers, the screen smearing red. No. His hand shot out with surprising strength. Fingers locked around her wrist. His grip was weak but insistent. Those dark eyes locked onto hers with fierce intensity. No police, no hospital. They'll take them. Take my children, you have to understand. You need medical attention, Lila insisted, but her voice wavered. Something in his desperation gave her pause. This was not the rambling of someone in shock. This was clarity, certainty, terror. Please. The word came out as barely more than a breath. Please. Lila's mind raced. Every rational thought screamed at her to call for help, to do the right thing, the legal thing, the safe thing, but she looked at the 2 babies, still crying in their car seats, looked at this man who was barely clinging to consciousness, yet still held on to them with everything he had left. She thought of her father, Officer Daniel Palmer, bleeding out in a twisted car wreck 3 years ago while she held his hand and waited for ambulances that came too late. She thought of her mother who had survived the crash only to die 2 days later in a hospital bed, calling for Lila with her last breaths. She thought of all the nights since then she had lain awake wondering if she could have done more, saved them somehow, if she just had the knowledge, the skills, the courage. Okay, she heard herself say. The words seemed to come from somewhere outside her herself. Okay, but we need to move you. Can you stand? He nodded weakly. They both knew it was probably a lie. Are they yours? Lila gestured to the babies. The children. Are they yours? My children. Pride flickered in his eyes even through the pain, even through the shock and blood loss. Gianna, Marco. Okay. Lila made the decision in that instant, understanding somewhere in the back of her mind that nothing in her life would be the same after this moment. Gianna and Marco are coming too. She grabbed the first car seat. Gianna, she guessed, based on the pink trim. Then Marco's seat. They were heavier than she expected. Solid, real. The weight of 2 human lives in plastic and fabric. She set them carefully aside, closer to the mouth of the alley where the rain could not reach. Then she returned to the man. I'm going to help you stand. My truck is just 20 feet away. Can you make it? He nodded again. Lila suspected he would have nodded if she had asked him to fly. Desperation did that to people. She slid her shoulder under his good arm, braced herself against his weight. He was tall, easily 6'2" or 3", solidly built under the expensive suit that was now ruined with rain and blood and God knew what else. On 3, 1, 2, 3. They rose together. His weight nearly buckled her knees, 140 pounds supporting 190. Physics said it should not work. Adrenaline said otherwise. He bit back a groan. Lila felt him trembling with the effort of staying upright. Each step was agony. She could tell by the way his breathing hitched, the way his fingers dug into her shoulder. Step by agonizing step, they made their way toward the mouth of the alley, toward the street, toward her beat-up Ford pickup sitting under a broken street lamp, its blue paint faded and rust-spotted. Doors that squealed when opened. But it ran. That was all that mattered. Wait here. She propped him against the truck's side. His legs shook. She was not sure how long he could remain upright. Lila ran back for the babies, grabbed both car seats, her arms burned with the effort. The handles dug into her palms, but adrenaline pushed her forward. Some primal instinct that said children in danger must be protected at all costs. The truck's passenger door squealed in protest as she yanked it open. She secured one car seat in the back, then the other. Her fingers fumbled with the seatbelts. She had never done this before. Never installed car seats, never transported infants. But somehow her hands found the right latches, pulled the straps tight, made sure they were secure. The babies had quieted to whimpers. Their wide eyes watched her with that peculiar awareness infants sometimes have, as if they understood more than they should, as if they knew their lives hung in the balance of this stranger's choices. "It's okay," Lila murmured to them, though she had no idea if that was true. No idea if anything would ever be okay again. "It's going to be okay." The man had slid down the side of the truck by the time she returned to him. Sitting on the wet pavement, head tilted back, eyes half closed, Lila's heart hammered as she helped him into the passenger seat, lifted his legs in, his head fell back against the headrest, breathing labored but steady, still alive. For now. She slammed the door and raced around to the driver's side. The engine coughed twice before turning over. Lila's hands gripped the steering wheel, white knuckles, shaking fingers. Her eyes darted between the road and the man beside her and the babies in the back. What was she doing? What had she just done? She pulled away from the diner, away from her normal life, away from safety. The truck's tires splashed through puddles, headlights cutting through the rain-soaked darkness of Brooklyn streets. The man, Moretti, according to the name visible on something in his jacket pocket, stirred beside her. "Where?" His voice was weak, confused. "My place. Queens. 20 minutes. "Why?" "Because you'll die if I take you to a hospital and you asked me not to, and those babies need someone. So I guess that's me now." The drive to her apartment in Queens usually took 30 minutes in good traffic. Lila made it in 18, running 2 red lights, pushing her truck to speeds that made the frame rattle. The whole time she kept talking, partly to keep him conscious, partly to keep herself from panicking. "I'm Lila, by the way. Lila Morrison. I live alone." "Well, I guess not anymore. At least not tonight. My apartment's small, but it's clean. I have some medical supplies. I used to be in med school. Did I mention that? 2 years at NYU before I dropped out. My parents died, car accident, and I couldn't continue after that. Every patient became my parents, every trauma, every code blue. It was like living that night over and over." The man made a sound that might have been acknowledgement, might have been pain, hard to tell. "So I became a waitress, still paying off the student loans though. $87,000 for 2 years of education and I'll never finish. But hey, at least I know how to stop bleeding, usually, hopefully. God, please let me remember enough." In the back seat, one of the twins started crying again. A tired, frightened sound that made Lila's chest ache, made something maternal and fierce wake up inside her. "Almost there," she promised them all, promised herself. Almost there. Her apartment building was a tired 4-story walk-up in Astoria, the kind of place where everyone minded their own business, where the landlord only fixed things when they became fire hazards, where the hot water ran out after 5 a.m. and the radiators clanged all night in winter. It was home. Lila parked as close to the entrance as possible, sat for a moment with the engine still running, hands still gripping the wheel, reality crashing over her in waves. She had just brought a wounded stranger and 2 babies to her home. She had not called the police. She had no idea what had happened to him, who he was running from, why he was so desperate to avoid hospitals. The man's hand touched her arm, made her jump. His eyes were open, clearer now despite the pain etched in every line of his face. Thank you. Just 2 words. Simple. Sincere. Lila nodded, drew a shaky breath. Let's get you inside. Getting him up 3 flights of stairs was a nightmare, each step an eternity. Moretti could barely stand, let alone climb. His weight against her shoulder increased with every floor. By the second landing, he was nearly unconscious again. Lila half carried, half dragged him, pausing every few steps to let him breathe, to let herself breathe. Mrs. Chen from apartment 2B opened her door at the commotion, took one look at them, the blood, the struggle, the desperation, then closed her door again without a word. Lila had never been more grateful for her neighbor's practiced indifference. By the time they reached her apartment door on the 3rd floor, Lila was shaking with exhaustion. Her muscles screamed, her lungs burned, but she fumbled with her keys, finally got the door open, guided Moretti straight to her small couch, the only real piece of furniture in her living room besides a folding table and 2 mismatched chairs. He collapsed onto it with a sound that was part relief, part agony. His head fell back, eyes closed, breathing rapid and shallow. Lila stood frozen for a moment, looking at this stranger bleeding on her couch. Then she ran back down the stairs. 3 flights. Her legs were rubber. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. The babies. She had left the babies in the truck. She grabbed both car seats, lifted them together. Her arms trembled with the effort. But adrenaline, that miraculous chemical, gave her strength she did not know she possessed. Up the stairs again, 1 step at a time, pausing on each landing to catch her breath, to adjust her grip. Gianna and Marco were miraculously quiet now, their eyes drooping with exhaustion. With shock, maybe. Too young to understand what was happening, but old enough to sense the fear. Inside her apartment at last, Lila set the babies down carefully, locked the door, slid the deadbolt into place, added the chain for good measure. Then she just stood there for a moment, back against the door, breathing hard, looking at the scene before her. Her small living room, second-hand furniture, collection of medical textbooks she could never bring herself to sell, now containing a severely injured man bleeding on her couch and 2 infant twins in car seats on her floor. The absurdity hit her all at once. 3 days ago, her biggest worry was whether she could cover rent and the electric bill in the same month. Now she was harboring a fugitive and 2 babies who were not hers, who she had no legal right to possess, no legal right to treat. Okay, she said it out loud, to herself, to the universe, to whatever force had led her to that alley. Okay, medical supplies first. She kept a first aid kit under the bathroom sink, a well-stocked one, a remnant from her medical school days that she had never been able to throw away, like the textbooks, like the white coat still hanging in her closet. Reminders of the person she had been, the person she had wanted to become. Emma grabbed the kit, clean towels, rubbing alcohol, every bandage she had, scissors, tape, gloves. Back in the living room, Moretti had his eyes closed. His breathing was too shallow, too fast, signs of shock advancing. She needed to work quickly. Lila knelt beside the couch, carefully peeled back his jacket. The shirt underneath was soaked through with blood, dark and wet. She grabbed scissors from the first aid kit and cut away the fabric. No time for modesty, no time for hesitation. The wound revealed itself in stages. Entry point at the front of his left shoulder, about 2 inches below the clavicle. Ragged edges, still seeping blood, but not spurting. That was good. Meant the bullet had missed the subclavian artery. She carefully shifted him forward, checked his back. Exit wound, clean. The bullet had passed through completely. Through and through, that was very good. Meant no foreign objects left inside to cause infection. Meant she could focus on stopping the bleeding and preventing shock. Lila's hands moved with a confidence that surprised her. Muscle memory from countless hours in simulation labs. From that one precious summer internship in an emergency room before everything fell apart. This is going to hurt, she warned, though she was not sure he could hear her. I'm sorry. She cleaned the wound as gently as possible, using sterile water first, then dabbing with antiseptic. The man, Moretti, his entire body tensed. A low sound escaped through clenched teeth, but he did not cry out, did not push her away. Either he understood she was helping or he was too weak to resist. Probably both. Emma worked methodically, packing the wound with gauze, applying pressure. The bleeding slowed, stopped. She wrapped his shoulder tightly with bandages, made sure the dressing was secure but not so tight it would cut off circulation. By the time she finished, 20 minutes had passed. Her hands were steadier now, the panic receding into focus, into purpose. But his fever concerned her. His skin burned to the touch despite the cold rain he had been sitting in. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His lips were pale, pupils slightly dilated. Shock in the beginnings of infection. Or maybe just shock. Hard to tell without proper equipment, without blood work and monitors and all the things a real hospital would have. Lila fetched a damp cloth, placed it on his forehead, covered him with her spare blanket, the threadbare one she used when winter made her apartment feel like a freezer. Only then did she turn her attention to the babies. Gianna and Marco were both awake now, watching her with solemn dark eyes, so like their fathers. Marco made a small sound, not quite crying, more like a question, a plea. The diaper bag. There had been a diaper bag. Lila found it tucked under Marco's car seat. Whoever had prepared to leave, prepared to run, had thought to pack supplies. Inside the bag, diapers, wipes, formula, bottles, changes of clothes. Everything two babies would need. Everything that said this was not an impulsive flight. This was planned, or at least prepared for. Lila had never changed a diaper in her life, had never fed an infant, had never done any of this. But she figured it out through trial and error, talking softly to the babies as she worked. I'm sorry if I'm doing this wrong. You're probably used to someone who actually knows what they're doing, huh? But we're going to figure this out together, okay? We're going to be okay. Marco grabbed her finger with his tiny fist. The grip was surprisingly strong. Something in Lila's chest cracked open. Some wall she had built after her parents died. Some protection against caring too much, against letting people in. She warmed bottles in the microwave, probably not the right way, but the best she could manage, fed them one at a time. They ate hungrily, their little hands reaching for the bottles, mouths working, grateful for the warmth, the food, the care. When they were done, she burped them, like she had seen in movies, patting their backs gently until they released small burps, feeling ridiculously out of her depth, but somehow managing anyway. Gianna's eyes drifted closed first, then Marco's, the exhaustion of trauma and fear finally catching up to their small bodies. Lila created a makeshift bed on the floor, using couch cushions and pillows, placing both car seats in the middle where she could see them from anywhere in the small apartment, where she could watch their chests rise and fall. Make sure they were breathing. Make sure they were safe. It was past 2 in the morning when Emma finally let herself sink onto the floor, her back against the wall, positioned between the couch where Moretti lay and the baby sleeping in their improvised nest. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky, lightheaded. She looked at her hands, still stained with his blood, looked at the babies, looked at the man on her couch. What have I done? She whispered to the empty room. As if in answer, Moretti stirred. His hand, hanging off the edge of the couch, flexed and relaxed. Lila watched the rise and fall of his chest, counting the breaths, making sure they stayed steady, stayed consistent. 1, 2, 3. Alive. Still alive. The babies slept peacefully, their faces relaxed in that perfect way only sleeping children achieve. Unmarked by worry, by fear, by the knowledge of how fragile life could be. Lila pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over the emergency call button. She should call someone. This was beyond her capabilities. This man needed real medical care. These babies needed family, child services, someone official. But his words echoed in her mind. They'll take them. They'll take my children. Who were they? And what would happen to Gianna and Marco if Lila made that call? She set the phone down. Screen dark. Decision unmade. Around 4 in the morning, Moretti's fever spiked. Lila woke from a restless half-doze to the sound of him murmuring Italian words she could not understand. his body restless beneath the blanket, trapped in fever dreams. She pressed the cool cloth to his forehead again, spoke softly even though he probably could not understand, could not hear her through whatever nightmare he was living. You need to fight this. Those babies need you. I need you to wake up and explain what's happening because I'm terrified and I have no idea what I'm doing. His hand found hers in his delirium, gripping with surprising strength for someone so weakened. Lila held on, anchoring him to consciousness, to the present, to life. Isabella, he murmured, still lost in fever dreams. Promise. Protect them. Promise. Who's Isabella? Lila asked. But he was gone again, sinking back into unconsciousness, into whatever memories haunted him. She found his wallet in his jacket, felt like an invasion of privacy, but she needed to know something, anything, some clue about who this man was, why someone had shot him, why he was so desperate to protect these children. Inside the wallet, no credit cards, just cash, a lot of cash, $100 bills folded together, at least $2,000, maybe more, and a photo, worn and creased from being looked at frequently, carried close, touched often. The picture showed Moretti, healthier, happier, smiling with a woman. She was beautiful, long dark hair, warm smile, her hand rested on her very pregnant belly. Moretti's hand covered hers, both of them wearing wedding rings, both of them glowing with that particular joy of expecting parents. Lila turned the photo over, written on the back in elegant script, Dante, Isabella, and our miracles, 3 months to go. Dante, his name was Dante, and Isabella, the name he had called out in his fever. The woman in the photo, the mother of these children. Lila looked at the babies. Understanding settled over her like a heavy coat. These were their children, Dante and Isabella's miracles. But Isabella was not here, and from the past tense in his fevered murmuring, Lila suspected she never would be. She tucked the photo back into the wallet, returned to her spot on the floor between protector and protected, guardian and guarded. The rain had finally stopped. Through her window, she could see the first hints of dawn lightening the sky over Queens, pink and gold edges creeping across gray clouds. A new day arriving whether anyone was ready for it or not. Lila pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around herself, watched over her unexpected charges. 3 lives that had collided with hers in a rain-soaked alley. 3 lives that were now somehow her responsibility. Dante Rossi, she had his full name now, a man running from something terrible enough to risk dying in an alley rather than go to a hospital, rather than let authorities near his children. And Gianna and Marco, 2 innocent babies caught in whatever storm their father was facing, too young to understand, too small to protect themselves, utterly dependent on the stranger who had found them. I'll keep them safe, Lila promised the sleeping room, promised herself, promised whatever force had led her to that alley. Whatever this is, whoever you are, I'll keep them safe. Dante's hand twitched in his sleep. Somewhere in his fevered unconsciousness, he seemed to hear. His breathing steadied slightly, the lines of pain on his face easing just a fraction. As dawn broke over New York City, Lila Morrison sat in her small apartment, blood on her hands, babies on her floor, a wounded stranger on her couch, and wondered if she had just saved 3 lives or ruined her own. The twins slept on, unaware of the weight of their small existence, of the mystery surrounding their father, of the danger that had driven them all into that rain-soaked alley behind Rosie's diner. Lila thought about calling in sick to work, thought about all the questions that would raise, thought about the jacket hanging by her door, the one she had checked for weapons before hiding it away, the cold weight of the gun she had found in the inside pocket. A reminder that this man, however desperate, however loving toward his children, was dangerous in ways she could not fully comprehend. But mostly she thought about the way he had held on to those car seats even while losing consciousness, the way he had whispered "my children" with such fierce love, the way his eyes had pleaded with her for help, not for himself, but for them. She thought about her own parents, about all the ways life could change in an instant, about how sometimes the right choice was the one that made no sense at all, the one that flew in the face of reason and law and self-preservation. I hope you're worth it, Dante Rossi, Lila whispered, finally allowing her eyes to close, finally letting exhaustion pull her under. For their sake, I really hope you were worth it. The city hummed outside her window, indifferent to the small drama unfolding in one unremarkable apartment. Somewhere out there, people were looking for Dante Rossi. Somewhere out there, danger was circling, closing in. But in that moment, in that quiet apartment, as morning arrived with all its mundane promises of a new day, there was only the soft breathing of two babies, the fevered sleep of a wounded man, and one exhausted waitress who had chosen compassion over safety and had no idea where that choice would lead. Lila's last thought before sleep claimed her was a memory from medical school. Something one of her professors had said during their ethics course, a grizzled old doctor with 40 years of emergency medicine behind him. The Hippocratic Oath says first, do no harm, but sometimes doing no harm means taking a risk, making a choice that might be wrong because the alternative is definitely worse. That's when you find out what kind of doctor you are, what kind of person you are. She had not understood it then, sitting in that lecture hall, young and idealistic, certain that medicine had clear answers, right and wrong, black and white. She understood it now, in this gray space between legal and moral, between safe and right, between the life she had known and whatever came next. The sun rose higher, light streaming through her cheap curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Ordinary morning light, touching extraordinary circumstances. And in that light, three people slept, bound together now by chance and choice, by desperation and compassion, by the simple human act of one person helping another in their darkest hour. Whatever came next, whatever consequences followed, whatever dangers lurked in the shadows of the day ahead, this moment existed. This choice had been made. This had been Lila Morrison, 26 years old, 3 jobs, $87,000 in debt, had become something she never planned, something she never trained for, a protector, a guardian, a lifeline. And somewhere in his fevered sleep, Dante Rossi, wounded and hunted, held onto that lifeline with everything he had left. Because sometimes salvation comes not in the form of angels and miracles, but in tired waitresses who take out the trash in the rain and refuse to walk past the sound of children crying. Sometimes it comes in small apartments, the leaky faucets and thin walls where strangers become family because the world left them no other choice. Sometimes it comes in the space between one breath and the next, between one decision and its consequences, between what should be and what must be. The rain had stopped, the night had ended, a new day had begun, and 3 lives, forever changed, slept on, unaware that this was just the beginning, that the storm outside had merely been a prelude to the one coming, that the choices made in one desperate moment would ripple outward in ways none of them could imagine. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today, in this moment, they were safe, fed, warm, alive. And sometimes in a world as hard as this one, that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. Lila woke to the sound of crying. Not the desperate wails from the night before, but the insistent, hungry cries of babies who knew it was morning and wanted breakfast. Pale November sunlight filtered through her apartment's thin curtains, and for one blissful moment, she forgot everything that had happened. Then her neck protested the awkward angle she had slept in against the wall, and reality came flooding back. She pushed herself up, every muscle in her body screaming. The clock on the wall read 7:23 in the morning. She had slept maybe 3 hours, and it felt like 3 minutes. Marco was the louder of the two, his face scrunched and red with the effort of making his needs known. Gianna whimpered beside him, building up to a full cry, following her brother's lead as twins often did. Lila stumbled over to them, her body moving on autopilot, running on fumes and determination. Okay, I hear you. I know you're hungry. She glanced toward the couch. Dante Rossi lay exactly as she had left him, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. The fever seemed to have broken. His face had more color than it had in the early morning hours, though he was still pale beneath his olive complexion, still unconscious, still vulnerable, but alive. Lila managed to warm bottles with one hand while holding Marco against her shoulder with the other, a skill she was developing out of pure necessity. the baby's crying tapering off slightly at the contact, the warmth of another human body, the promise of food coming. She settled on the floor with her back against the couch, cradling Gianna while Marco waited in his car seat, his cries growing more insistent, more demanding. "Your turn's coming, I promise," Lila told him, her voice rough from exhaustion and the emotional weight of the past 12 hours. She was halfway through feeding Marco when Dante stirred. His movement was subtle at first, a shift of his head, a flexing of his fingers. Then his eyes opened, unfocused and confused, blinking several times as consciousness returned in slow waves. His gaze traveled across the unfamiliar ceiling, the strange walls, the small apartment that was not his home, before finally landing on her. Their eyes met. Lila saw the exact moment full consciousness returned to him, when memory clicked into place, when understanding of where he was and how he had gotten here flooded back. His entire body tensed, his hand moved quickly, searching for something. The weapon, the jacket, the means to protect himself. It's in the closet," Lila said quietly, not moving from her position with Marco, keeping her voice calm, steady. "The jacket, I mean. I didn't take anything. I just checked that it was safe, then put it away." Dante's jaw tightened. He tried to push himself up, and immediately his face went white with pain. A sharp intake of breath. He fell back against the cushions, sweat beading on his forehead. "Don't," Lila said firmly. "You lost a lot of blood. Your shoulder needs time to heal, and you'll tear the stitches if you're not careful." Stitches. His voice was hoarser than it had been the night before, rough from hours of fever and unconsciousness. "I couldn't leave it open. The wound needed to be closed." Emma kept her tone matter-of-fact, even as her heart hammered, even as she wondered if he would be angry, if he would see her help as invasion, as presumption. "I did the best I could with what I had." Dante's dark eyes studied her for a long moment, assessing, calculating. Then his gaze shifted to the baby in her arms, and something in his expression cracked, softened, the hard edges falling away to reveal raw emotion underneath. "Marco," he breathed, his voice breaking on the name. "He's fine. They're both fine." Lila glanced at Gianna, who had dozed off in her car seat after eating, content and peaceful, unaware of the tension in the room. They slept through most of the night once they were fed and changed. I think they were just scared and hungry. She watched Dante's eyes move between his children, cataloging every detail, checking that they were truly unharmed, that last night had not been some fever dream, that his daughter and son were still here, still whole, still his. His hand trembled slightly as he reached toward Marco, though the distance was too great to actually touch the baby, the gesture heartbreaking in its futility. "Do you want to hold him?" Lila asked, her voice gentler now. "When he's done eating?" Dante nodded, not trusting himself to speak, the emotion he was fighting to contain visible in every line of his body, in the way his throat worked, in the brightness of his eyes. Marco finished his bottle. Lila carefully shifted position to bring him closer to his father. She helped Dante adjust so he could cradle the baby against his good shoulder, supporting his injured arm with a pillow, making sure the wound was not stressed. The transformation was immediate, complete. Marco settled against his father's chest as if he belonged there, as if this was the safest place in the world, his small hand clutching Dante's shirt, his breathing evening out, relaxing. Dante's eyes closed, his lips moved in what looked like a prayer, or maybe just gratitude too deep for words. His good arm wrapped around his son, holding him close, holding him safe. Lila stood, needing to move, needing to do something with her hands, to give this moment some privacy even in the small space of her apartment. "How long?" Dante asked after a moment, his eyes still closed, his voice thick with emotion he was struggling to control. "Since I found you, about 9 hours. You stayed awake." "Someone had to." Lila moved to the kitchen area, really just a corner of the living room with a counter and mini fridge. She started making coffee, more for something to do than because she wanted it, though caffeine would help, would keep her functional through whatever this day brought. Dante opened his eyes. "Your wallet said Dante, Dante Rossi." A pause. long enough that Lila thought he might not answer, might maintain whatever wall of secrecy protected him. Then, yes, I'm Lila Morrison, but I guess you heard that last night. I wasn't sure if you'd remember. I remember. His voice was cautious now, careful. You work at the diner, Rosie's. Yeah, I've been there 3 years. Lila poured water into the ancient coffee maker, watched it drip. I'm guessing you weren't there for the pie. I was running. The words came out flat, factual, no embellishment. They found me 6 blocks away. I made it to the alley before I couldn't go any further. Who found you? People I'd rather not discuss. Lila turned to face him, leaned against the counter, crossed her arms. I think I deserve more than that, Mr. Rossi. I could be arrested for what I did last night. Failing to report a gunshot wound, not calling the authorities, harboring a fugitive potentially. That's a crime. Multiple crimes, actually. Then why didn't you call them? Fair question. One Lila had been asking herself all night. You asked me not to, and the babies. I couldn't risk them being taken into the system. The system? Child services, foster care. Lila wrapped her arms around herself, the chill of the apartment seeping in, or maybe just the chill of too many memories. My parents died 3 years ago. I saw what happens to kids in the system. Some get lucky, most don't. I couldn't take that chance with them. Understanding flickered across Dante's face, something that might have been respect, might have been gratitude. I'm sorry about your parents. Don't. Lila shook her head. Don't be nice to me. Don't make me feel good about this decision because I'm terrified I made the wrong one. The coffee maker gurgled, filling the apartment with its familiar scent, the smell of normal mornings, of regular days, things that seemed very far away now. Lila poured 2 cups, added sugar to both. She had no idea how Dante took his coffee, but the sugar would help with the blood loss, would give him energy he desperately needed. She brought him a cup, helped him shift so he could hold it with his good hand. Marco had fallen asleep against his chest, tiny snores barely audible, the picture of innocence and trust. Thank you, Dante said. And Lila could not tell if he meant for the coffee or for everything. She settled into the armchair across from the couch, cradling her own mug, the warmth seeping into her cold hands. The photo in your wallet, Isabella. Dante's entire body went rigid, every muscle tensing. You went through my things. I needed to know who you were. If you had family I should call, emergency contacts, anything. Lila met his glare steadily, not backing down, not apologizing. She's beautiful. Was beautiful. The past tense hung in the air between them. Heavy, final. Lila waited, giving him space, time, the choice to explain or not. Isabella died 8 months ago, Dante said finally, his voice hollow, empty of everything but grief. Complications during the birth. The doctor said she was stable, that the complications were under control. Then her heart just stopped. I'm sorry. And Lila was, genuinely. She had seen that photo, the love in it, the anticipation, the joy of 2 people building a family, building a future. She never got to see them grow, Dante continued, his eyes on Marco, on the son who would never remember his mother. She held them once for 20 minutes. That was all she got, 20 minutes and then she was gone. The pain in his voice was raw, unfiltered, the kind of grief that never really heals, just scabs over, waiting to break open again at the slightest touch. Lila did not push, did not probe. She had learned in her brief medical training that grief needed space, not prodding, not well-meaning questions, just silence and presence, and the knowledge that someone was bearing witness. They sat in silence for several minutes, drinking coffee, each lost in their own thoughts, in their own losses, the baby sleeping peacefully, unaware of the weight their small existences carried. Gianna woke up, making small sounds that were not quite crying, not quite cooing, something in between. The sound of a baby testing whether anyone was paying attention. Lila retrieved her from the car seat, settled her in her lap, supporting the baby's head the way she had figured out through trial and error, through instinct and desperation. You're good with them, Dante observed, his tone neutral but his eyes watchful, assessing. I'm faking it, Lila admitted, bouncing Gianna gently, the baby's dark eyes watching her face. I've never been around babies, but they're easier than I expected. More resilient. They've had to be. Bitterness crept into Dante's tone, an edge of anger at the world, at circumstance, at whatever had led them to this moment. The last 8 months have been chaos. Isabella's parents blamed me, tried to take the twins, claimed I was unfit. Then there were business complications. Business? Lila seized on the word. What kind of business requires you to run through Brooklyn at night with your children, afraid of hospitals? Dante's expression shuddered. Walls going up. Protection against questions he was not ready to answer. The kind that's better not discussed. No. Lila's voice hardened, surprising herself with the force of it. You don't get to do that. I saved your life. I'm harboring you in my home. I'm caring for your children. You owe me the truth. You want the truth? Dante shifted carefully, wincing at the movement. The truth could put you in more danger than you're already in. I think finding you shot in an alley already put me in danger, don't you? They stared at each other, neither backing down, neither willing to yield, the tension thick enough to cut. Marco stirred between them, making a small sound. The tension broke as Dante automatically adjusted to soothe his son, his expression softening despite himself. My family is in import and export, Dante finally said, each word chosen carefully. That's not a lie. We move goods through the ports, legitimate and otherwise. We have territories, alliances, obligations that go back generations. And we have enemies who would love nothing more than to see the Rossi name disappear. Mafia. Lila said the word he would not. Put voice to the truth hanging between them. That's a word people use. Dante's tone was careful, neutral, neither confirming nor denying. My great-grandfather came from Sicily, built a network. My grandfather expanded it. My father ran it. Now I do. And someone wants you dead. Someone always wants me dead. This time they got close. His hand unconsciously moved to his shoulder, to the wound beneath the bandages. Close enough that I had to run with my children. Close enough that I couldn't risk a hospital where they have to report gunshot wounds. Close enough that I ended up in your alley, bleeding out, praying someone would find us before it was too late. Who shot you? I don't know. Not for certain. Dante's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his eyes. But I have suspicions. People I thought I could trust. People who've been with my family for years. That's the worst part. Not knowing who betrayed me. Who wants me gone badly enough to risk harming my children in the process. Lila absorbed this, trying to reconcile the wounded father holding his sleeping son with the idea of organized crime, of violence and illegality, of a world she had only seen in movies. What happens now, she asked. Now I heal. Contact people I know I can trust. Make arrangements. Dante's voice was clinical, detached, the voice of a man used to making hard decisions. You've done more than enough, more than anyone had a right to ask. Once I can walk without assistance, I'll leave. You can forget any of this happened. And if you can't walk, if you get an infection or the wound doesn't heal properly, then I deal with it. That's not a plan. That's suicide. Dante's eyes flashed, frustration, anger, fear all mixed together. What do you want from me? Gratitude? I've already thanked you. Money? I can pay you for your trouble. Just tell me what you want so we can move forward. Lila stood abruptly, startling Gianna, the baby's face scrunching, threatening tears. Lila paced to the window, bouncing gently to soothe her, looking out at the street below. Sunday morning in Astoria, people heading to the bodega, the coffee shop, living their normal lives while Lila's world had tilted completely off its axis. I don't want your money, Lila said quietly, her back to him. I want to know that helping you wasn't a mistake. I want to know those babies are going to be okay. I want something that tells me I didn't just throw my life away for nothing. She turned to face him. You want to know what I really want? I want you to trust me. Not because you have to, not because you're desperate, but because I've earned it. Because I've proven I'm on your side. Because those babies need more than a father who's running scared. They need hope. They need a future. And right now, you're not offering them one. The words hung in the air. Harsh, true, necessary. Dante stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then slowly something shifted. The walls coming down. Just a little. Just enough. You're right, Omar, he said quietly. I'm not offering them much. I'm offering survival, day to day, hour to hour. That's all I've had to give since Isabella died. He looked down at Marco, at the son sleeping trustingly against his chest. But they deserve more. They deserve the life their mother wanted for them. Safety, normalcy, a chance to grow up without looking over their shoulders. Then let me help, Lila said. Really help. Not just patch you up and send you on your way. Let me be part of whatever comes next. Why? Why would you do that? Good question. One Lila was still trying to answer herself. Because 3 years ago I watched my parents die, she said finally. The truth she had not spoken aloud to anyone. I was there when the ambulances came, when the doctors worked on them, when they stopped working, and I couldn't do anything. I had 2 years of medical school and it meant nothing. I was useless. Her voice cracked. Every day since then, I've wondered if there was something I could have done, some choice I could have made, some action I could have taken. And I never got an answer because they were gone, and I was alone, and all I could do was survive. She looked at Dante, at the babies. Last night in that alley, I had a choice, walk away or help. For the first time in 3 years, I could actually do something, save someone, make a difference, and I did. So no, I can't walk away now. I can't go back to just surviving, not when I finally have a reason to live. The apartment was silent except for the soft sounds of the baby's breathing, the distant traffic outside, the hum of the refrigerator. Dante's eyes glistened. Isabella would have liked you. You said that before. I mean it. She had this way of seeing people, really seeing them, their potential, their heart. She saw mine despite everything, despite what I am, what my family does. He paused. She made me want to be better. For her, for them. And when she died, I thought that chance was gone. It's not gone, Lila said firmly. It's right here, right now. You just have to choose it. A knock at the door shattered the moment. 3 sharp raps. Purposeful, demanding. Both of them froze. Lila's heart hammering. Dante's good hand moving instinctively toward where his weapon would be if he could reach it. Building maintenance, a male voice called through the door. Checking radiators. It was Sunday morning. No maintenance worked on Sundays, certainly not in this building where the landlord barely fixed emergencies during the week. Dante's eyes met Lila's, a silent communication. Don't answer. She nodded, held her breath. Gianna chose that moment to make a small sound. Not quite crying, but enough to be heard in the silence. Another knock, louder. Anyone home? The doorknob rattled, someone testing it, checking if it was locked. Lila had locked it, deadbolt and chain, both. Thank God. Voices outside, low, conferring. 2 people at least. Wrong apartment, one said. You sure? The other replied. I'm sure. Keep checking. Footsteps retreated, moving down the hall, toward Mrs. Chen's apartment, toward the stairs. Lila counted to 100 before she dared move, before she risked crossing to the window to peek through the edge of the curtain. 2 men exited the building, both in dark clothes, both moving with the confident stride of people who knew they were dangerous, who were comfortable with violence. They climbed into a black SUV parked across the street, sat there for a moment, then drove away. They're gone, Lila whispered, her voice shaking, her hands trembling. Dante had somehow managed to get himself more upright despite the pain, despite the injury, protective instinct overriding physical limitations. For now, they'll come back. Yes. What do we do? Dante was silent for a long moment, thinking, planning. We can't stay here long term, but moving me right now would be dangerous. I'm weak. The wound needs more time, and moving with 2 infants would draw attention. So we stay, Lila said, but we're smarter about it. What do you mean? I go to work tomorrow. Normal routine. Nothing changed. You stay here with the babies. Quiet. away from windows. We act like nothing's wrong because nothing is wrong. I'm just a waitress going to work. You're just someone who doesn't exist. Dante studied her. You'd lie for me, to your boss, to customers, to anyone who asks. I already lied to those men just now by not opening the door. Lila sat back down, the adrenaline fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. What's a few more lies at this point? This isn't a game, Lila. Oh, these people are dangerous. If they find out you're helping me, they won't hesitate to hurt you. I know. And she did. She had seen enough in the past 12 hours to understand exactly what she was dealing with. But I'm not walking away. So either we do this together or we both fail. Your choice. Dante looked at his children, at Marco sleeping against him, at Gianna watching from Lila's lap with solemn eyes. The choice was already made, had been made the moment he stumbled into that alley. The moment Lila found them. Together, he said quietly. Okay, together. The rest of Sunday passed in careful routine. Lila learned the rhythms of caring for two infants, feeding every 3 hours, diaper changes, naps, the endless cycle of needs that babies had. Dante slept in fits and starts, his body fighting to heal, fighting infection, fighting shock. Lila changed his bandages twice, checking for signs of trouble. The wound looked better than she feared. No unusual redness, no heat beyond normal inflammation, no smell of infection. Her hands had remembered more than she thought possible. The training buried somewhere in her muscle memory, coming back when needed most. Evening brought Tommy Chen, the knock different this time. A pattern, a code. Dante visibly relaxed when he heard it. It's okay, he told Lila. He's mine. Tommy was compact, solid, with kind eyes that contrasted sharply with the dangerous edge he carried. He assessed the apartment in seconds, saw Lila, saw the babies, saw Dante's condition. Boss, he said simply, a world of meaning in that one word. Relief, concern, question. Tommy, this is Lila. She saved our lives. Tommy turned to her, bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. Then I owe you a debt I can never repay. You don't owe me anything, Lila said, uncomfortable with the gratitude, with the formality. I brought supplies. Tommy held up bags. Formula, diapers, medical supplies, cash and protection. He pulled a gun from his jacket, set it carefully on the table. Lila stared at it, the cold metal gleaming in the lamplight. Real, deadly, a reminder of exactly what world she had stepped into. She won't need it, Dante said quickly, reading her expression. Better to have and not need, Tommy replied, his tone gentle but firm. The people looking for you, boss, they're not playing. Enzo's got half the organization convinced you're dead or gone. He's making moves, taking territory. If he finds out you're alive and he finds her, she needs a way to protect herself. Enzo, a name, an enemy, a piece of the puzzle Lila had not had before. Who's Enzo? She asked. Dante and Tommy exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. My cousin, Dante said finally. My underboss, the man I trusted to watch my back. And apparently, the man who wants me dead. The betrayal in his voice was palpable, worse than the physical wound, deeper than any bullet could reach. Family, Tommy said bitterly, always family that cuts deepest. He turned to Lila. You're going to work tomorrow? Yes. Good. Act normal. I'll have eyes on the diner. On your route. If anyone follows you, if anyone seems suspicious, you'll know. How will I know? Tommy smiled. Because I'll be there. And if I can't be, someone I trust will be. You're under protection now, whether you like it or not. It should have felt threatening, should have felt like she was being watched, controlled. But instead, Lila felt something else. Safe. For the first time since finding Dante in that alley, she felt like maybe they had a chance. Maybe this was not just desperation and hope. Maybe there was actually a plan, a path forward. Tommy stayed for an hour, going over details. Security, communication. He gave Lila a phone, a burner, untraceable. You need anything, you call that number. Day or night, someone will answer. He gave Dante medication. real antibiotics, painkillers, things that would help him heal faster, safer. Doc Martinez sends his regards, Tommy said. Says you're an idiot for not coming to him. Doc Martinez would have asked questions. Doc Martinez has been with our family for 30 years. He wouldn't have asked anything. Maybe, but I couldn't risk it. Not with them. Dante glanced at the babies. Tommy's expression softened. Isabella would be proud. How you're protecting them. What you're willing to do. Isabella would tell me I'm an idiot and should have planned better. That too. They laughed. Brief, bitter. The laughter of men who had lost too much and were trying to hold on to what remained. When Tommy left, the apartment felt quieter, emptier, but also somehow more solid, more real. They were not alone in this. There were allies, resources, a network that could help. Lila fed the babies at her evening bottles. Dante watched from the couch. His color better now, his strength slowly returning. Thank you, he said as she burped Marco, for everything, for staying, for not running when you had every reason to. Where would I run to? Lila replied, but she smiled when she said it, taking the edge off, making it a joke instead of a truth. Still, not many people would have done what you did, what you're doing. Lila looked at Gianna sleeping in her arms, at Marco fighting to keep his eyes open, losing the battle. They needed someone. You needed someone. I was there, that's all. That's not all, and you know it. Maybe. But Lila was not ready to examine too closely why she was doing this, why she was risking everything for strangers, why she felt more alive in the past 24 hours than she had in 3 years. Night fell, the baby settled, Dante drifted off to real sleep now. Not fever dreams, not unconsciousness, actual rest. Lila sat in her makeshift bed on the floor, back against the wall. Guardian of this small, strange family that had formed in fire and blood and desperation. Tomorrow she would go to work, lie to Rosie, smile at customers, pretend her life was normal while her apartment hid the most dangerous secret she had ever kept. But tonight, in this moment, 3 people slept safely because she had made a choice, had taken a risk, had decided that sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the law. Her phone buzzed, the burner from Tommy, a text. All clear tonight. Sleep. We're watching. Lila typed back. Thank you. 3 dots appeared, then another message. Boss is lucky to have you. So are the kids. Sleep well, Lila Morrison. Tomorrow's another day. She set the phone down, closed her eyes, let exhaustion finally claim her completely. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. People lived. People died. People made choices that changed everything or nothing at all. And in one small apartment in Queens, a waitress became something more. Something she had never planned. Something she had never trained for. A protector. A guardian. A lifeline in the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new choices. But tonight they were safe. And sometimes that was enough. 1 week had passed since that rain-soaked night in the alley. 7 days that felt like 7 lifetimes compressed into moments of terror and tenderness. 7 days that had rewritten the future for 3 adults and 2 babies who had collided by chance and stayed together by choice. Dante could walk now without favoring his injured shoulder. Could lift both twins simultaneously, one in each arm, their weight distributed carefully but confidently. The wound had healed better than Lila had dared hope during those first frantic hours when she thought he might bleed out on her couch. Pink scar tissue marked where the bullet had entered and exited, a permanent badge of survival etched into his flesh. The apartment had become their entire universe, a sanctuary and a prison simultaneously. Lila ventured out only once, a hood pulled low over her face, moving through the corner bodega with the paranoid awareness of someone being hunted. She bought diapers and formula and milk, paid in cash, avoided eye contact, and returned to the apartment breathing hard as if she had run a marathon instead of walked 3 blocks. Dante never left at all. The outside world might as well have been another planet. His universe had shrunk to these 4 walls, to the woman who had saved him, to the children who gave him reason to keep fighting. The twins knew nothing but this cramped space and the 2 people who cared for them with increasing competence. Gianna had started pulling herself up on furniture, testing her legs, preparing for the milestone of walking. Marco babbled constantly, creating his own language, storytelling in syllables that meant nothing and everything. Tommy Chen came every day as the sun set, always checking the hallway first, always knocking in the same pattern. 3 quick raps, pause, 2 more, pause, 1 final knock. The code that meant safety, that meant friend. Thursday evening, he arrived with news that made the air in the apartment feel thinner. Enzo's closing in, Tommy said without preamble. He never wasted words on pleasantries anymore. There was no time for social graces when death circled closer each day. Building by building, apartment by apartment, he's systematic, thorough, offering $75,000 now for information, threatening anyone who might have helped you. Dante stopped pacing, a habit he had developed over the past week. Restless energy with nowhere to go. How close? 2 blocks east, maybe 3. He'll be here by Saturday, Sunday at the latest. Tommy's weathered face was grim. We need to move you. Tonight. Tomorrow at the absolute latest. No, Dante's voice cut through the room like a blade. No more running, no more hiding, no more letting that bastard think he's won. Lila looked up from where she sat with Gianna in her lap, the baby playing with her fingers. What are you saying? I'm saying we end this. Tomorrow. I meet with Enzo and the council. I present my case. We force a judgment. Dante's eyes burned with something beyond anger. Something colder. More dangerous. Certainty. I'm not spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Neither are they. He gestured to the twins, to Gianna examining Lila's fingernails with intense concentration, to Marco stacking soft blocks that toppled with each attempt, undeterred by failure. Tommy shook his head. Boss, you walk into a meeting with Enzo. You're walking into an execution. Not if the council's there. Not if witnesses are present. Not if I have proof of what he's done. Dante turned to face his oldest friend. You told me once that my uncle Giovanni taught you something before he died. What was it? Tommy's expression shifted. Surprise? Discomfort? The look of a man whose secrets were surfacing. He said to watch you, to test you, to see if you were worthy of leading when the real challenges came. And I think he'd be proud of what I've seen this past week. A man who chose his children over his pride, who trusted a stranger when trust was the most dangerous currency, who's willing to rebuild instead of destroy. Tommy paused. Your uncle wasn't a simple man, boss. He believed in trials by fire. What aren't you telling me? Dante stepped closer, his voice dropping to something quieter and infinitely more dangerous. Tommy met his eyes, held his gaze. Giovanni Rossi didn't die 8 years ago. The car accident was staged. He's been alive this whole time, watching from the shadows, orchestrating tests to see if you'd break or become something stronger. The words landed like physical blows. Lila saw Dante's face drain of color, then flush with rage, then settle into something harder than stone. My uncle is alive. Not a question, a statement requiring confirmation. Yes, and he'll be at tomorrow's meeting. He's the one who called the council together. Who's been tracking Enzo's betrayals? Who's been waiting to see if you'd survive his trial? Tommy's voice carried weight. History. Truth that had been buried under years of deception. I'm his son, boss. Giovanni is my father. I've been reporting to him all along. Silence crashed through the apartment like a shockwave. Lila held Gianna tighter, the baby making a small sound of protest at the increased pressure. Dante's hands clenched into fists. Released, clenched again. The effort of controlling his rage visible in every tense muscle. You've been spying on me for 8 years. I've been protecting you. There's a difference. Tommy didn't flinch, didn't look away. Every threat I warned you about was real. Every danger I helped you avoid was genuine. My loyalty to you has never been false. But yes, I reported to my father. Told him whether you were worthy of the empire he built. And am I? Worthy? The question dripped with bitterness and fury barely contained. You're more than worthy. You're better than he ever was, than any of us ever were. Tommy's voice softened. Tomorrow, he'll tell you himself. He'll explain why he did what he did. Whether you forgive him is your choice. But he's the key to ending Enzo, to ending all of this. Dante turned away, staring at the wall as if he could bore through it with sheer force of will. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow. Set up the meeting, neutral ground, full of counsel, and tell your father that when this is over, he and I will have words. Many words. Understood. After Tommy left, the apartment felt smaller, somehow. Suffocating. Lila put the babies down for the night, the routine of bottles and diapers and soft songs a welcome distraction from the tension crackling through the air. When both twins finally slept, she found Dante standing by the window, forehead pressed against the cool glass, not looking out, just existing in the space between action and paralysis. "Talk to me," Lila said quietly. "My uncle faked his death. Let me grieve. Let me struggle. Watched me nearly die protecting his grandchildren. All as some kind of test." Each word came out clipped, controlled, the rage underneath carefully banked. What kind of man does that? A man who wanted to know if you'd break under pressure, if you'd compromise your principles to survive, if you'd sacrifice your children for power. Lila moved closer but didn't touch him. "Not yet. And you passed. You chose them over everything. You chose right over easy. It doesn't make it hurt less. The betrayal, the manipulation." He finally turned to look at her. "Everyone I trust has lied to me. My uncle, Tommy, even Isabella kept things from me at the end." "I haven't lied to you." The words came out before Lila could stop them. "Not once, not about anything." Something in Dante's expression shifted, softened at the edges. "I know. You're the only completely honest thing in my life. The only person who chose to be here without agenda or obligation or blood ties forcing the choice." He reached out, cupped her face with his good hand, the gesture achingly gentle for a man capable of such violence. "When this is over, when the dust settles and the threats are gone, I need you to know something." "What?" Her voice barely above a whisper. "I love you, Lila Morrison. I don't know when it started. Maybe when you refused to let me die in that alley. Maybe when you stood between those babies and danger without hesitation. Maybe when you looked at me like I was a man worth saving instead of a monster worth destroying." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But I love you, and after tomorrow, if I survive, I want a chance to build a life with you, a real life. Not this hiding, not this fear, something normal and boring and safe." Tears spilled down Lila's cheeks before she could stop them. "You don't get to make me fall in love with you and then talk about dying." "I'm not planning on dying." "Good, because if you do, I'll never forgive you." She grabbed his shirt, pulled him down, kissed him with everything she felt and couldn't say. Fear and love and desperate hope all tangled together. The kiss deepened, became something more. A promise, a future. A choice they were both making with open eyes and terrified hearts. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow changes everything." "I know. Whatever happens, Tommy will get you and the babies to safety. There's money, documents, everything you need. Stop planning your funeral. Plan for living instead." "Ted." Lila's voice was fierce. "Plan for what comes after. For teaching Marco to walk. For Gianna's first word. For all the boring, beautiful, normal things we're going to do when this nightmare is over." "Okay," he smiled, small but genuine. "Okay, I'll plan for after." They stayed like that until exhaustion pulled them both towards sleep. Dante in the bedroom, Lila on the couch, the babies between them in their car seats, breathing softly in the darkness. But Lila barely slept. Every sound from the street below made her jump. Every creak of the old building settling sent adrenaline spiking through her system. Tomorrow would bring resolution or destruction. There was no middle ground left. When dawn broke pale and cold through the curtains, Dante emerged from the bedroom already dressed. Black suit, white shirt, the armor of his world. He looked like the man he had been before the bullet, before the alley, before everything. Except for his eyes. Those were different. Harder, older, changed by everything he had survived. Tommy arrived at 8 with more supplies and final instructions. The meeting was set for 7 that evening. An old social club in Little Italy that had been neutral ground for 3 generations. The entire council would be present. Giovanni Rossi would emerge from 8 years of hiding. Enzo would make his case for why he deserved to lead instead of Dante. And someone would walk out in control of the Rossi empire. Or no one would walk out at all. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Lila fed the babies, changed them, played with them, all while watching the clock tick towards 7. Dante held them for hours, memorizing their faces as if this might be the last time. At 6, Tommy returned with 2 men, guards for Lila and the babies. Insurance in case Enzo made a move while Dante was vulnerable at the meeting. If you don't hear from me by 9, you leave, Dante told Lila as he prepared to go. Tommy has a car waiting. You take the babies and you disappear. Everything you need is in that safe deposit box. I'm not planning for you to fail. Neither am I, but I'm a realist. He kissed both babies, holding them close enough that Gianna squirmed in protest. Then he turned to Lila. Thank you for everything, for seeing something worth saving when you could have walked away. Come back to us. Not a request, a command. I will. Then he was gone, and Lila was alone with 2 babies and 2 silent guards and a clock that seemed to move both too fast and too slow simultaneously. 7 p.m. came and went, nothing. 8 p.m. arrived with no word. At 8:30, Lila's phone finally rang. Tommy's number. She answered with shaking hands. It's done. Tommy's voice was rough, exhausted, triumphant. Enzo's finished. The council ruled unanimously against him. He's been stripped of everything. Exiled from the family. And Dante? Alive. Some bruises. Some blood that's not his. But alive and coming home. Relief hit so hard Lila had to sit down before her legs gave out. When? 20 minutes. There were complications. Enzo didn't take the ruling well, but it's over now. Really over. The line went dead. Lila sat in the silence of her apartment, 2 babies playing at her feet, and let herself breathe for what felt like the first time in hours. 19 minutes later, footsteps pounded up the stairs. The coded knock. The door opening. Dante filled the doorway, alive and whole and victorious. Blood on his knuckles, a bruise forming along his jaw, but standing, breathing. Here. Lila flew at him, nearly knocking them both over with the force of her embrace. He caught her, held her tight enough that breathing became difficult, and neither of them cared. It's over, he said into her hair. Giovanni revealed everything. Enzo's crimes, the betrayals, the murders, including Isabella. His voice cracked on his wife's name. He had her killed, paid off a doctor to botch her care, all so he could weaken me, make me vulnerable. God, Dante. The council gave him a choice, exile or trial by combat. He chose to fight. Dante pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I made sure he lost, made sure he'll never threaten anyone I love again. Is he dead? Worse, alive but broken, stripped of honor, family, everything that gave his life meaning. He'll live out his days knowing he lost completely. Cold satisfaction in those words. Justice served without mercy. Gianna chose that moment to pull herself up on the couch, take 2 wobbling steps toward her father, and fall into his legs. Dante scooped her up, held her close, the hardness melting from his face. Hey, Principessa, did you miss Papa? Gianna babbled something that might have been yes or might have been nonsense, but the way she clung to him made the meaning clear. Marco, not to be outdone, crawled over and demanded equal attention. Dante managed to lift both babies, one in each arm, and sink onto the couch with Lila beside him. For a long moment, they just sat there. 4 people who had found each other in chaos and made something resembling family from the wreckage of their separate tragedies. What happens now? Lila asked. Now we leave, tonight. There's a house upstate, away from the city, away from all of this. We disappear for a while. Let things settle. Dante looked at her. If you'll come with us, if you'll take a chance on this broken family. I'm already part of this family, have been since that alley. Lila's hand found his, squeezed. Where you go, we go, all of us together. Even though my life is complicated and dangerous and nothing like what you deserve, especially because of that, because you need someone who sees the man you're trying to become, not just the man you were. And those babies need someone who loves them without agenda or obligation. She smiled. Also because I love you, you stubborn, complicated, infuriating man. You love me. Wonder in his voice, as if he couldn't quite believe it. Unfortunately for my peace of mind, yes, I love you. Dante kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promises about the future. The babies squirmed between them, protesting the lack of attention, and they broke apart laughing. That night, they packed what little they had. Tommy arranged transportation. By midnight, they were in a van heading north out of the city, leaving behind the life Lila had known and the life Dante was escaping. The house by the lake was everything the apartment wasn't. Spacious, quiet, surrounded by trees instead of concrete. The air smelled clean. At night, stars were visible. It felt like another world. Over the following weeks, they built something new. Dante healed fully, the scar on his shoulder a reminder of how close death had come. Lila enrolled in online courses, returning to the medical degree she had abandoned. The twins grew and changed daily, Marco taking his first steps, Gianna saying her first clear word, which was inexplicably, cheese. Giovanni came to visit once, an old man who looked like Dante might in 30 years. He and his nephew spoke for hours behind closed doors. Lila never knew what passed between them. But when Giovanni left, Dante seemed lighter somehow. Not forgiven, perhaps, but no longer drowning in betrayal. 6 months after that night in the alley, Lila stood in a judge's chambers in a small town courthouse, Dante beside her, and officially adopted Gianna and Marco Rossi. The twins who had become hers through crisis and love and choice. The judge, an elderly woman with kind eyes, smiled as she signed the papers. These children are lucky to have you. We're the lucky ones, Lila replied, meaning every word. That evening, Dante proposed, not with a grand gesture or expensive ring, just the two of them sitting on the dock while the twins napped inside, watching the sun set over the lake. Marry me, he said, not because you have to, not because of the babies, but because I want to spend whatever time I have left making you happy, making us a real family in every sense. Yes. No hesitation, no doubt. Yes, I'll marry you. They married a month later in the same courthouse, the judge officiating, Tommy and his wife the only witnesses besides the twins. No reception, no guests, just a quiet promise between two people who had found each other in the darkest circumstances and chosen light instead. Life settled into routines. Dante consulted for legitimate businesses, using his skills for strategy and negotiation in legal contexts. Lila worked toward her degree while caring for the twins. Tommy visited monthly, bringing news from the city they had left behind. The Rossi family business was transitioning fully legitimate under Giovanni's guidance. Enzo was reportedly living in Argentina, broken and forgotten. A year after the alley, almost to the day, Lila graduated with her medical degree. Dante surprised her with a small clinic space in town, a place where she could practice, where she could help people the way she had once helped him. On the day the clinic opened, Dante stood with her as she unlocked the door for the first time. You saved my life in an alley. Now you get to save more lives in better circumstances. We saved each other, Lila corrected. I was drowning in debt and grief and just surviving. You gave me purpose, gave me a family, gave me reasons to live instead of just exist. Gianna, now walking confidently, tugged on Lila's hand. Mama, come see. The words still made Lila's heart clench with joy. Mama. She was someone's mother. Not by biology, but by choice and love and the bonds forged in crisis. Coming, baby. As the sun set that evening, Lila stood in their kitchen preparing dinner while Dante read to the twins, their small bodies curled against him, utterly trusting, utterly loved. This was the life she had never planned, never imagined, never thought possible. A life built from one impossible choice in a rain-soaked alley, from seeing someone who needed help and refusing to walk away, from choosing compassion over safety and love over fear. The radio played softly, something classical, Dante's Choice. The twins were starting to doze, fighting sleep the way toddlers do, determined not to miss a moment. Story time's over, Dante announced. Time for bed. Groans of protest, negotiations. the normal chaos of bedtime routines. Lila watched from the kitchen, dish towel in hand, and marveled at the strange path that had led here. From 3 jobs and crushing debt to a family and purpose. From empty survival to actual living. Later, after the twins were finally asleep, she and Dante sat on the porch swing, the night air cool and clean, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. "Do you ever regret it?" Dante asked quietly. "Giving up your old life, the city, everything you knew?" "Never, not once." She tilted her head to look at him. "Do you regret that I found you? Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. After the twins, obviously." "Obviously," she smiled. "But seriously, you saved more than my life that night. You saved my soul, gave me reason to be better than I was, to build something good instead of just protecting something corrupt." He kissed the top of her head. "I spent my whole life in darkness, thinking that was all there was. You showed me light. Pretty sure you did the same for me." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds. Crickets, distant lapping of water against the dock, the soft hoot of an owl somewhere in the trees. This was what happiness looked like. Not grand gestures or perfect moments. Just this. Quiet evenings and sleeping children and the person you love beside you, equally scarred and equally healed by everything you had survived together. Somewhere in the house, Marco cried out briefly, a nightmare or just needing reassurance. They both stood automatically, parents in sync, ready to comfort. But the crying stopped, settled, peace restored. "False alarm," Dante said. "He's getting better at self-soothing." "They're growing up. Too fast." Lila leaned into him. "But we'll be here for all of it. First days of school, first heartbreaks, first everythings. Together. Always together." They returned to the swing, to the comfortable silence of 2 people who knew each other's rhythms, who had seen each other at worst and best, who had chosen each other repeatedly, consciously, completely. Years later, when the twins were grown and starting their own lives, when Lila's clinic had expanded to serve 3 counties, when Dante's hair had gone silver, and Lila's had started to gray, they would still remember that night. The rain, the alley, the impossible choice that changed everything. Gianna would become a doctor like her mother, carrying on the legacy of healing. Marco would become a teacher, finding his own way to help others. Neither would fully understand the violence that marked their first year, the danger their father had escaped, the courage their mother had shown. But they would understand love, sacrifice, the power of choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. And they would know, deep in their bones, that family was not just blood. It was choice and commitment and showing up every day, even when the world made that terrifying. The legacy Lila and Dante built was not empire or wealth or power. It was simpler and infinitely more valuable. It was love that survived darkness, hope that outlasted despair, family forged in fire and tempered by time into something unbreakable. Years from now, sitting on that same porch swing as an old woman, Lila would think back to the terrified 26-year-old who found a dying man in an alley and made an insane choice. And she would thank that girl for her courage, for her compassion, for refusing to walk away when every instinct screamed to run, because that choice led here, to this life, this love, this family. And it was worth everything, every risk, every fear, every impossible moment, all of it worth this, worth everything.